right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Not So Wide Divide. It's been a couple weeks since we sat, so I want to first off welcome my counterparts in this project. Good to see you guys again.
Thank you. You know, this might be a too easy episode if you could check out the merch. Just for the new viewers, you know, and everybody that's already been here a while, like Jared said, you know, it's been a while since we've been here. We got a couple of good topics. I know he normally says this part, but we're trying to move over to where if he ever needs to take a break, we could kind of carry the show and not be left in arm's weight, you know. So shout out to the big guy, and I'm gonna pass this to Cody.
Oh, just good to be back, man. Good to be back. Had a good Father's Day, weekend with the wife and kids. But you know, this is a labor of love for us. We do this because we enjoy it. So you know, it truly is good to be back, sitting down and hanging out with you guys.
Yep, I miss talking about you know our current events. Even we don't communicate as much as I'd like on our off weeks. You know, with the weeks that we do, we text a lot and kind of talk about topics that we want to do, and so I enjoy that. But I mean, life is busy, and you know everybody's got so much going on. And like Cody just said, we do this as a labor of love, and so we keep pushing that. But this week on this episode, we're going to get into vaping and kind of the landscape of it today. I didn't realize how much of a problem or potential problem that it is and where it could go. Recently, in our local community, we've had, a grant that was written or approved that's going to put more police officers in schools to kind of, address the issue.
But and we'll come back to it. The grant was already in existence. They just used it in a different way.
Yeah, but it wasn't a vaping grant, right?
No, it's still not.
Still not.
It's an underage drinking grant, but they've earmarked certain parts of it or a certain amount of it to be utilized to combat juvenile vaping. They've got approval from the state or whatever, but it's still an underage drinking grant is where that money's coming from.
So with this grant, they just add another subsides to it. So like you said, it was underage drinking. Now they're going to add vaping to it.
I think eventually they probably will, because it's not just a local problem,
right?
But as far as did they write it into the grant itself? I don't know. I don't know. I was told they got permission from the grant committee that oversees that grant to do it the way that they're doing it.
It's a federal grant.
All right.
It's federal money that's always every law enforcement.
I think that's a state grant. I think it falls under highway safety, but I'm not 100% on that.
You know the exact name of it?
Yes, it's the JUDE grant, JUDE, Juvenile Underage Drinking and Education, I think, or something like that. I'm not 100% on that, but I know it's specific. It's specific for it. Like when people go around and they buy, like they send a juvenile to the store and they buy alcohol and they go in there and inside the store. It's the same grant.
Same grant. So this grant has been. This is not nothing new.
No,
something that they get annually or
yes,
you know.
Yes, the concept of using it towards juvenile vaping is new.
Yeah, and that's why they had to get the permission to do it. And
right, but that article that you read, they were in front of the school board.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that had nothing to do. They were just kind of educating the school board.
Correct.
On it.
And that's kind of where I want to go on it, because again, I guess we'll first touch on. And let me preface this by saying that Cody has a little bit, way more insight in this than I do. I mean, he's in schools every day. Just being, I guess, in the general public, I see a lot of adults vaping, and I know vaping has kind of gotten trendy over the last 5 or so years. Coming from an ex-smoker, you know, I've tried it. It's it's very appeasing, I guess, coming from an ex-smoker.
Yeah,
it's something that you can check, change your flavors. You can change how you wanted it. So it's definitely appeasing. I didn't think it would have the appeal that it does. I mean, they even started and that's kind of when I started thinking back, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of been in the schools longer than I initially thought, because I started going back and thinking of, I guess they're in college now, but these kids I knew that were in high school years back, and juuling was a thing.
Yeah, same thing.
And but I didn't initially tie those two in together.
Juuling?
Yeah, that's what it called.
Juul was a name brand of a vape.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a pocket vape. It's literally something you can cup in your hand. You'll never see it, and it's something that, like I said, I didn't think that it was. I think a couple of your rebel kids, kind of go off on it, but having conversations over the last week or so since these things come out, and going back and visiting these people, and they were like, oh no, we had, I knew 20 or 30 people, and I was like, ain't really. Like, I didn't even know really 30 people in high school that smoked, Right.
But I mean, you got to think about this too, man. When we were in high school, both of us smoked in high school. Think of how nasty a cigarette tastes and smells. But we still tried those.
Oh no, I get it.
And a lot of our friends were smoking cigarettes too, or dipping tobacco or whatever. And I mean, a vape is nowhere near as harsh taste-wise,
or smell,
or anything as a cigarette is. But I'll tell you, I'll actually wait for Tori to come back so he can give some insight onto it. But I've been fighting vapes in the schools for probably close to 5 years now, and you can see the trend in the popularity of it just shooting up through the roof, man. Part of the problem is, and I know I might be all over the place, so kind of keep me reined in. But and I have the same conversation I'm about to have with you when I would have a kid in my office with their parents for vaping, right? Because you got to educate the parents too. If you expect them to help invoke any kind of change in their child's behavior, they need to be educated on what they're dealing with. Most people look at vapes the same way that you or I or our parents looked at cigarettes, right? But there's a few problems with that. The number one, well, not the number one problem, but the first problem is a cigarette's finite. Okay, so you smoke it, it gets down to however far it's going to go. You can only smoke it to the butt of the cigarette, and then you have to throw it out. So there's almost like a built-in stoppage in the cigarette. Like once I get to this certain point, I put my cigarette out, I have enough nicotine, I go about my business, right? Now there are some people that'll chain smoke, but for the most part, you smoke a cigarette, that's your dose, and it's hour, 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes before you smoke another cigarette, depending on how addicted you are to the nicotine. Vapes don't have that, right? I can sit here and puff on my vape as long as I want to, and if I'm having a conversation with my friends or we're in a social environment, I may smoke the same amount of puffs that I would on 2 or 3 cigarettes in one session. The problem with that is a vape's not designed to be smoked like a cigarette. A vape's designed for 1 or 2 puffs. That's the equivalent of smoking a cigarette and then be done with it. Nicotine-wise, right. Which brings me to my next point. And when I'm talking to the parents, I need them to understand this. And I use the example that I used to vape as well. I used vaping to get off of cigarettes. Okay, when I started vaping and made the decision to quit smoking, I was smoking about a pack and a half a day. That's what I was smoking. On a good day. On a bad day, if I was stressed out a little bit more, maybe sometimes 2 packs, right? But so I went to one of these nicotine shops. I don't remember which one I started out going to. Trying to educate myself about the vapes. I started with the little sticks or whatever, like they call them the pocket ones or whatever. Looks like a cigarette, but I wasn't getting the same throat hit. And if anybody that's a smoker out there understands what I'm saying, you get a certain hit from a cigarette in your throat, and you wouldn't think you'd want that. But when you're trying to substitute a cigarette and you start vaping and you don't get that, you don't feel like you're smoking anything. So I was looking for that too. And I was told, well, you have to spend a little money and get the actual device. So I went into a smoke shop and I'm talking to the people. And I told them my plan was to slowly decrease the amount of nicotine so I can break that habit and then break the habit of smoking. So he said, look, how much you smoke? I told him, and he gave me a nicotine level 3. Okay, and that's the equivalent of a pack and a half, 2 packs a day. if you go to any gas station right now and you go buy one of these puff bars or one of these vaping devices, these disposable vaping devices that these kids are smoking, it's a nicotine level 5. And the only reason it's not a 6 is because they can't put that much nicotine into a vape. Right? It's the highest amount that they can have. They don't even make a 4 or a 3 in those disposables because they want people addicted to the nicotine. So these kids are starting out, if all of us are kids in high school and we go into the bathroom and I'm a kid with a vape and I'm smoking, right? You, my buddy, you might have tried a cigarette or two. Hey, man, try this.
Yeah, it's a grape cigarette.
Yeah, this tastes like a Laffy Taffy. Go ahead and try this. Oh, man, all right, cool. Oh, I get a little lightheaded, right? Because it's the amount of nicotine that's in it. It doesn't take as long for you to get addicted.
Straight to the bloodstream.
And when you do get addicted, you're ultra addicted. These kids are like, I
Becoming
don't even know what the level is. 3 packs, 4 packs a day. The equivalent of the level of nicotine in these things.
And it's amusing to the kids. Like when they first get it, it's really just about the big smoke that they could create with it. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of it is,
They're
right?
creating games about it, man.
Right.
Like,
So
Puff the Magic Dragon shit. Like,
Right.
So like you were saying, it is addictive to them. And the time that they come to cut them off, how would you cut a kid off?
Well, and that's the next thing that I tell the parents. People think that we can fix this problem with law enforcement interdiction, hammering these kids, just throwing the book at them, right? Because it's a disciplinary problem. It's not a disciplinary problem. It's a substance abuse problem. It really is. And until we understand that and we start addressing it as a substance abuse problem, then we're fighting a battle we'll never win. When you have kids that can't get through a class without vaping in a class, or walking down the hallway
nuts, man.
and they're vaping in the middle of a hallway at school, right? Knowing they're going to get seen, but they're trying their best to hide it
because they need it.
Because they are that addicted to it. It's ridiculous the height of addiction that these kids are on. But the parents that smoke understand it a whole lot better.
Yeah. Oh no.
The parents that don't smoke, when I break it down to them like that, you can almost see like a light bulb go off.
Right.
Like, God, I've been harping on my kid and basically trying to beat it out. They're not beating their kid, but you know what I mean. And they're not dealing with it as a substance abuse problem.
But just what you said, it kind of ties back into the society of today, of that instant gratification,
Absolutely.
that instant success, that instant feeling. Like you smoke a cigarette, and even the first time you'd smoke a cigarette, like you might have got a little lightheaded 3/4 of the way through the cigarette.
Yes.
But like you said, the first time you hit that vape, and especially if you drag it, you take a big drag.
Yes.
It's like whoa, it's intoxicating.
Yeah, and again with cigarettes, man, if you take too hard of a puff on there,
A choke.
you're choking, you're coughing, and some vapes do that to you. Those little puff bars don't, But you get these kids, and I hear a lot of people, and it drives me nuts, man, when they start talking about, all these kids all of them are vaping CBD. All of them are vaping marijuana and these things, and that's why they're passing out, and that's why they're throwing up, and that's why we have to get ambulances go to these schools. It's not. If I put nicotine into a syringe and put it into your body, you will die.
Yeah.
Nicotine is a poison, right? So when we take in this amount of nicotine and you've never used it, or your only amount that you're using is in small doses, and then you get a level 5, and you take a huge big puff, and then you take another huge big puff, like, oh, this tastes good. You start getting a little lightheaded. Ooh, this is fun. You take another big puff.
It's overdose.
Then it's exactly what it is. You're overdosing on nicotine. So these kids go to the hospital, and their parents are having them tested for cocaine, methamphetamines, fentanyl, THC, the whole spectrum of illegal substances, and they're coming back, my kid's clean. Well, ma'am, I alluded to that, I told you that, don't be surprised that it's probably just nicotine. But people don't understand that. They don't, because most of our mindsets are still set and comparing it to when we were kids smoking cigarettes. And it's just not the same. It's not.
So the true problem there is the actual addiction.
It is.
So just
Yes.
like with anything, for one, the kids are going to start taking this without our knowledge. Doing this behind our back. So by the time we actually do find out that they're doing it, I'm pretty sure the kids are already addicted to
yeah.
it. It's like he said, the instant gratification deal. And with it being in the education system, you would think different, but everybody doesn't think the same. Like, you're seeing a different change in the kids, attitude-wise, growth spurt-wise, just focus-wise. So when we relate that to that addiction, you really can't do like you said they was trying to do, throw the book at them, be strict on them, this and that, because now you're trying to force a person that's addicted, that's not fully mature, to try to stop something cold turkey.
Right.
And all you're going to do is get combative with him or her, you know, because they're going to need it at some point and you're not understanding.
Tori, I have parents that come almost in tears, you know, after you've caught their kid 2-3 times, you know, at school with a vape. I don't know what else to do. I've taken everything away from them that I can take from them. I've punished them. They can't go outside. They're still getting the vapes because they're getting them from school.
Right.
You know, you gotta let them come to school. I don't know what I can do further. And I tell them, you're not paying attention, right? Like, I've told you this before, and you don't want to harp on no, I told you so. That's not what it's about. But I sit them down again and I tell them, now you can start to see that it's not a disciplinary problem. And I remind them, remember when I told you this is a substance abuse problem? You can't fix a substance abuse problem with taking all the stuff away from your kid, because they don't want that stuff anyway. Give me my vape, right? You can have my PlayStation. Give me my vape. I tell the kids too when I'm speaking to them, because you know that I'm not addicted. We all said the same thing, and I tell them, if you're not addicted, then stop. If you're not addicted, stop vaping for a week.
But see, dude, and this is where, because I smoked for a long time, and for me, I mean, there's no doubt that you have a dependency on the nicotine. But smoking anything, whether it's vape or cigarette or weed, I don't care what it is. There's multiple things that become addicted to. It's not just the nicotine.
Right.
I used to enjoy the fact of it allowed me 5 minutes or whatever the time was to walk away. It's crazy, and I still say this now. When I see somebody smoke a cigarette, I can still feel that in my lungs.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something I used to enjoy. I used to enjoy that expansion and breathing, blowing out the smoke, right? Like, so it's the levels of addiction. It's not just it's magnitude now because of the amount of nicotine, but it's not just the nicotine.
And you're 100% right. I tell people all the time as well. I vaped for 2 months with no nicotine, right? Just to break the habit of actual smoking.
And then you're breaking the habit of actually inhaling.
So I was able to break the addiction to the nicotine, right, by leveling myself down. And then it was just as long of a journey to stop the actual act of smoking. I was getting no nicotine from it, but you're addicted to the routine. Yep. You're addicted to the actual physical part of smoking. You're addicted to the throat hit, the lung expansion. You get all those things without the nicotine. So yeah, 100%, man. It's a multi-layered addiction. It really is. Especially something like smoking that you do several times a day, all day long. It's not like and I guess some addicts or so did the crack or something like that they hit it several times a day, but you're going to smoke a whole lot more than you're going to do these other illegal narcotics. So when you're actually smoking, yeah, you're 100%, man. It's like I said, it's a multi-layered addiction. It's not just the nicotine.
And even as far as you talk with these parents, and like you said, you were 2 months with no nicotine. Just the science in vaping alone is not good. Right. I know the jury's still out, and there's still a lot of vapors out there that if you're watching this, let us know. But just the science you read about the potential of popcorn, crazy side effects. It's just the chemicals in the.
I hit on this with especially with the kids, because I asked them, "Have you ever heard of popcorn lung?" And most of them are like, "No." So I actually show them the it's like a I don't know, 6-letter word, starts with a D. I can't. Tori can maybe look it up, but that's the chemical that causes popcorn lung. The reason it's called popcorn lung is not because of what it does to your lungs. And maybe a doctor or something out there can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding from the research that I've done is it's called popcorn lung because that chemical was originally found in popcorn butter, like in the 1950s or 60s. And that chemical causes this reaction in your lungs that could be fatal, and it's irreversible.
Correct.
but it will hamper the volume of air your lungs can get into it. So the damage that it causes to your lungs is for a lifetime, and it's like I said, it's not, you can't fix it. But that's why it's called popcorn lung. It's because of the correlation to the popcorn butter and that chemical. And like I tell these guys, did you check the ingredients on your vape? Do you know if that chemical is in there? Because when I was vaping, I did the research because I'm an adult, and I tell them, you're a teenager, you're going to do teenage things, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to do stupid stuff. This is one of those things that you need to do some research on, right? This stuff is not FDA approved. I can go in my garage right now and start a vape shop and make vape juices, and there's no guidance or oversight, right? There's not. The only thing that's actually governed from what I'm able to find is the amount of nicotine that's in the product. Yeah.
And I mean, they're putting formaldehyde and all these crazy fillers.
So you have to go to a reputable vape shop, first off.
So you think the problem is just teenage vaping? You don't see it taking over a lot with the adult world as well?
It is, but I'm less concerned with what an adult does, and more concerned with a teenager who's not going to take those steps to do the research that they're supposed to, and is not going to maybe make the best decision for themselves. So I'm less concerned, like I said, with what any of you do, right? You're a grown adult than a teenager that could be influenced by their friends a lot more.
Right. So we never wanted to be our friend, though. You know what I'm saying? When you was growing up, you always was ready trying to be for the adult life, if it makes sense. Like you never wanted to be. I never wanted to be Mickey Russo. He's my homeboy, but I don't want to be Mickey. I want to be an adult.
Right.
So with the kids, the same thing. Like you have some adults that's just crazy vapors. Like it's starting to take over on the job. Like I have technicians that vape, and man, sometimes you'll get into the van of a guy that vapes.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, man! It looked like he just took the chemicals and just laid it on the dashboard.
Right.
So when I see that, I have the conversation with him like, man,
that's in your lungs.
That's in your lungs. Like if it looked like this on your dashboard, imagine what your insides look like.
And one of the things that I try to educate the parents and the kids on too, getting into the chemical side of it, the CBD oils and the THC oils and some of the just the regular vaping juices that people are making, if they're not rated to be smoked, then you shouldn't be putting it in your body that way. Because what happens is a lot of these chemicals, they're able to be vaporized. Right? You can take a whole bottle of CBD oil, it's thick, right? Put it in a vape, and you can 100% vape it. The problem is that chemical is very heavy. So when it coats the inside of your lungs, like it does to your coworker's dashboard, those lungs can't expand properly. The weight that's in them, it's like putting oil inside of a balloon and trying to blow it up, right? Yeah, you'll get some movement, but that's gonna be a heavy, saggy balloon.
It's not.
Right?
I mean, you're talking about your esophagus. You're
talking
about your diaphragm. Everything that's from your lips to
absolutely.
You get to them lungs, man. You're coating everything.
Yep.
But let's get on the.
Well, hold on one second. I just want to take one step back. To your point about the peer pressure, and I'm not want to be my friends. I wanted to be an adult. Yes and no, in my opinion, right? Because I didn't smoke because my mom smokes. I smoked because my friends were smoking, and I wanted to be hip and cool, and maybe not those words, but I wanted to fit in, right? They were smoking, I wanted to try it. Now, because my mom smoked, the availability for me to get cigarettes was a whole lot higher. Because I could go to my mom's purse in the middle of the night, steal a cigarette out of there, and then meet up with my friends, and we could, smoke a cigarette. So the availability was there, and I think maybe to a degree, the acceptance of it, right? That there was nothing wrong with it because I saw the adults around me doing it.
Right.
But the actual, I remember my first cigarette. I was in my backyard at my mom's house, and my friend brought one over, and they actually showed me how to inhale the cigarette because I had no idea how to do it. We were just blowing it out of our mouth, which opened my eyes, to smoking. And it sucked. I don't know how I ever took another drag off the cigarette, but peer pressure is a legit thing.
And
it really
and
is.
I wasn't really ruling out the peer pressure deal, but at the end of the day, it has to start somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like the kid that bought you the cigarette may have seen an adult You know.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
no
So-
kid
He got
starts
the
something
cigarette
without
out,
thinking about
Right.
doing it.
So
yeah.
my whole purpose of it was not really to blame anybody. You know what I'm saying? Just to actually bring another light on the subject.
Right.
And only because how I see it taking over on the actual jobs now. You know,
Right.
like everywhere you go, you see vapes. Like you see vapes that may be empty on the ground, like you see cigarette packs some places. And that was just that. To the what other statement you made that I was trying to lock in the back of my head so I could come back to, but I can't remember. So we'll just catch it at the end, I guess.
I'm sure
it comes
it'll
back
dawn
to you.
on you, I'm
I want
sure.
to talk
Right.
about we mentioned the grant and what it's going to do to add additional police officers to high schools to
Yes.
specifically to target or help minimize
In the city limits. Yes.
vaping. Oh, just in city limits.
Yes. That's the city police of Homer are doing that.
Okay. So I was under the assumption that it was multiple.
No, that article.
So it's just going to be
that
terrible
was-
in high school.
Well, it started at terrible. This year it was just terrible in high school. Coming up, you probably start seeing it at Ellender. You know, you may possibly start seeing it at Oakland Junior High, depending on what their vaping problem is. But yeah, that's just a city. That's just the city of Homer. Or the city police are doing that.
But
It's not the
so
sheriff's office.
when I first read the article, I called Cody immediately, and I was like, "What's your thoughts on this, man?" Because me personally, thought it was a little crazy. You know, I think that again, I'm still not convinced that we have, as I've read in the article, and Cody said it, you know, too, an epidemic. Or pandemic.
It's a lot.
And this, I don't debate that it's a lot, but is it more? I say more. It's harder. You're talking about kids, and I'm not trying to say one's better than the other.
Right.
Correct.
But when you have a finite amount of money to target a specific thing, when you're taking it away from the underage drinking, that kids, and typically again, kids are not underage drinking at home. Right, they're underage drinking. They're going to buy alcohol at these stores or at these, you know, whatever. They're getting into vehicles. They're driving. It's such a multi-layered thing.
It is.
So that's my first thing about you're taking it from there. And then my second point is I am not 100% convinced that adding police officers to a school to target a specific thing is also money well used. If you're going to put another police officer in the school, put a police officer in the school, right? Not to specifically target
Right.
a specific person, category,
It's hard to
thing.
argue with that. You're right.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like, wait, we don't have officers in every school now. So now we're going to put multiples to pinpoint a problem that's affecting 5% of our students?
Well, I'll tell you this. Well, excuse me. We'll start with the first point about the first
Taking
one
money?
was taking the money away from the Jew grant. Just in the amount of kids doing one or the other, vaping's way higher in usage than underage alcohol is. But when you start taking it to the compounding effect of juvenile underage drinking and driving,
With vaping.
it's hard to even weigh that, right?
Okay.
Because
Again, I don't know the numbers. I'm just going off of emotion. But, you know,
well, no, but I mean, what I'm getting at, look, the amount of vaping versus underage drinking. If this is vaping, right? Vaping's way up here. The amount of kids doing it. But I have never handled a fatality with a kid who was vaping and driving, right? So when you start putting in that aspect of underage drinking and driving, you know, that compounds the importance level. So I mean, I don't even know how to quantify that comparison.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a hard one to compare, because
but I mean, that's what in essence they're doing.
well, I don't think they're taking money away necessarily from it, right? Because you gotta take into account too with the whole COVID. A lot of these stores have been shut down. They've had to go to where, you know, it's one person at a window versus versus coming into the store. So as those things have started to come on and come to the forefront, the enforcement of underage purchasing of alcohol, I don't say the enforcement, the catching of them, I don't know a proper term for that, but catching those stores has gone drastically down because they have the time to ID. They're being extra careful because the little business that they have, they don't want to lose. So there is almost a little bit extra money in there.
That's a good argument.
Right?
I mean, I get that.
What they're trying to do from the point forward is to get additional funding put into that specifically for targeting
Every
underage.
grant's always looking for additional.
Well, I mean, we've been fighting a war on drugs for how long? So I mean, it's about, that's a whole other podcast. But the world revolves around money. But so they're not trying to take money away from juvenile underage drinking. More so is trying to get additional funds on the back end of it to
support
additional efforts for vaping. Now I will say this, kind of I guess just a little brief history of how this even came about. Yes, vaping is a huge problem in schools. For those that don't know, when you start talking about arrest numbers, and we'll get into the whole arresting for smoking, we'll get into that. Understand when I say arrest, I'm not talking about handcuffs on a kid, bring them to jail. I'm talking about being charged and having to go talk to a judge. That is considered an arrest. Same thing if I wrote you a summons, okay? So when I say arrest, I'm not talking about incarceration. There's a difference between arrest and incarceration. The level of...
Glad you clarified that.
The number of vaping cases in a school with kids being charged, probably around 40% of all charges in the schools.
40%?
Yes.
Actual charges?
Yes, of kids vaping. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me. The last time I checked on the numbers...
But I mean, you're going off of your experiences. I mean, This is not statistics. You just...
No, this is like I can pull the numbers up.
No, but I'm saying that 40%. That's what you feel from your
Yeah.
experience.
It could be 30%. It could be 50%. Right. I'm just giving a rough estimate from the numbers that I see, and the experience that I have, boots on the ground dealing with it. You're talking about probably around 40% of the arrests out of school comes from vaping on a high school.
So what would be another comparable, right? If something's 40%, what compares to that offense? Fighting or
when you start? There's none.
So
there's none.
So everything else breaks down the other 60. I guess is what I was going at.
Yes.
Okay. So there's no other single thing
no.
that's higher
Absolutely
than.
not. Absolutely not.
That's staggering.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying. When they say a pandemic, and I don't like using that word, right? But it's a problem.
Yeah, because it's easier to get to. It's easier to access. It's easier to hide.
Dude, it was me and Cody talking. When we said, first thing when we were talking about it, I said we're going to do a podcast about it eventually. Didn't realize it was going to be in the same week that the article came out, but
right.
And it was like, because he just said, look, get some numbers, find out what it is, and then I just went, on the computer like everybody does. We could never buy cigarettes online. I mean, we didn't have shit you could buy online. But they don't have to go to the store. They can ship this to grandma's house, or grandma says, "Oh, a package came in for little Jimmy," and give little Jimmy his package, and it's freaking vapes, man. That's crazy.
But it's the age of technology. A lot of
that's not even how most of them are getting it. Honestly,
sorry, we don't have any minors that listen to this show because I just gave you away.
Right.
It's like anything else, you should be watching with your kids.
No, absolutely.
But that, yes, you're right. I can get on the internet right now and I can order as much vape stuff as I want to.
And all I gotta do is click the thing that says I'm over 18.
Right, and that's a problem by itself. Not just underage kids with vaping. You talk about pornography and alcohol, all kind of stuff. Like it's ridiculous out there on the World Wide Web. But that's not how most of them get it. I don't think luckily they haven't figured that one out to a degree yet.
Right.
Most of these kids are getting it from their friends who work at gas stations, older siblings.
But you got to be 18 to work at a gas station.
Right, but if you and I are in high school together, you're 18, you work at a gas station. I'm 17, 18. Well, at 8, we don't even charge the 18-year-olds, but even in school. If I'm 16 and I'm at school and you and I are buddies, we play football together, whatever. You're 18, you're working at a gas station. and you know what it does to inventory. You take 6 or 7 puff bars,
Or you buy them and resell them.
or buy them and resell them.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
That's what I've been doing in high school.
That's probably what they're doing.
That is what they're doing. You're gonna come
We used
back.
to sell cigarettes for $1 a cigarette in school.
They-
And that's for cigarettes for $2.50 a pack.
and they buy these vape bar. These
It
puff
only
bars,
took you one cigarette to run your
We was
cuckoo
making
though.
money.
These puff bars at a store are like $5 to $10. They sell them for like 25. So that's
Same margins as my cigarettes
Right.
selling back in the day.
right. So that's what you're looking at. But I mean, again, you ask these kids when you catch them. They're not telling their friends.
Right.
We know through other sources that that's how the majority
That's
of
where
them are
it's
getting
coming
them.
from.
But when you start talking about the levels of nicotine in these puff bars, I'll ask the kids, and I'd say 80% of them have no clue the level of nicotine that they're taking into their body. Some of them do,
Well, they have no comparison.
right? So some of them are like, yeah, it's a 5. I'm like, okay, it's just some arbitrary number they made up in space.
They have no idea.
They have no idea what that 5 means. So then I'll break it to them just like I broke it down to you guys, and like, oh God, dog, like, yeah, bro, you're taking in a very high amount of nicotine, and not even realizing it.
No.
They're not.
So, T, what's your take on the additional police
Well,
presence
that was
in
the other
schools?
point. Yeah, we'll come back to that because you don't mind. I'm always long-winded. So
Yeah.
So, I honestly kind of like it, but I feel like if they do it like they police the streets, no offense, Cody, it's gonna become a problem.
ain't no offense, man.
Because you're gonna have the regular habitual offenders. That you're gonna actually see and be like, hey, oh, he walking kind of fast. I know what he's going to do. You know what I'm saying? So you're trying to beat him to the corner to see which way he's ducking. And I think that's going to be a little bit excessive, But that's the trend that most things go in. What would actually be the consequences once it happens? Like I catch this underage smoker.
They charged. They arrested.
We'll get into that.
That's when it becomes heavy.
Right. Well, and we'll get into that one in a minute too. What's your take on the additional officer at the school?
Yeah, I kind of, when we broke into this, my whole thing is that I'm okay with having additional police officers in school. I'm not okay with having any police officer anywhere targeting something specific when you're talking about minors or in school. I feel like it's kind of like a sting operation, and I don't like that. I don't like the fact that you're targeting, regardless of what it is, because now you have these trained officers targeting specific things, looking for specific things, and when you do that, you have those horse blinders on, and you're missing potentially every other thing. So if you're going to be in school and they're going to have additional officers in there, give you guys additional resources to do a better job for everything. Not just targeting something. I get it's a problem. And again, having an additional officer there allows you to be there. It allows y'all to educate these teachers to look more for things. So I'm all about having an additional officer, not to target something specific.
So what's school policy about shaking kids down before they come into class?
Well, that's a whole different thing, and we'll get into that in a second. I'm gonna address the first part, the first question. So I agree, okay, with both of you. I'll start by saying this. We have to be selective of the officers that we put into our schools to be an SRO, right? And as an SRO, we have to be selective of the officers that we bring in to help out with things because we're dealing with children, right? Young adults, however you want to categorize. We're dealing with anywhere from junior high to high school age kids on a campus.
13, 18.
So you can't, you're absolutely right, Tori. You can't bring in your gung-ho narcotic agent, and I'm not trying to say those guys
I understand.
I know. But I think you can see what I'm getting at. And put them in a setting with a bunch of kids and expect them to behave accordingly, right? You can't put certain officers are great on the street, phenomenal street officers, but when you put them in a setting of a school, you can't police it the same way.
Yeah, not everybody's a chameleon.
Right.
And that's just human nature. I mean,
But
you
the
fit in
problem with
certain
working
areas.
working these grants is it's open for anybody in the department that wants to make some overtime to come in and work and work this. Now, I'm not saying that won't change, because I really do believe that when they start seeing that that's probably a bad idea, the police department is going to change that.
And
That it's going to be certain officers that are, and it'll be up to the SRO,
I
unfortunately.
don't know if you have any
to be able
input
to-
in that, but if you do, or even if you can,
I have some input in that in
Turbo Paris.
But I'm just saying in
the
general, just to-
non-police department, because I don't want to get too.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like,
I have some
that
some leeway with the
conversation
sheriff's office.
needs to be had with the people that are going to be in this grant situation.
Well,
Like, hey,
and-
look, let's make sure. Let's be ahead of this. Let it
I don't-
not
I don't-
happen, and
I
we go,
don't-
oh, let's go
He
back
don't know.
and change.
I don't
this.
think he can bring that argument up.
I can bring it up, but I have no say so over the SRO.
No, I get that. I'm not saying you do, but
It's
I'm
just
they run
bringing
this
knowledge to it, to your
even,
thoughts.
even to, share this podcast with, to those, Tim Saunier, Chief of Police, like, hey guys, like, be ahead of this.
Right.
We are 3 tax-paying voting citizens in this parish that have a concern, and I promise you, we're not the only people that have these concerns, especially if it's brought to their attention. They're going, hey, look, let's be ahead of this. Let's not have it go in and say, okay, we should have done it this way.
Yeah,
Let's think about
don't-
all the things that we should have
don't-
done and do them before we implement this,
I don't think anything the police department is doing or trying has malicious intent.
Oh, no, I
Nah,
agree
we
with you.
know.
I'm not
Like,
saying
I
that
really
at
think
all.
that they see the problem. They're trying to fix it the best they can.
Right.
The difference is you have people, and I'm not talking about the sheriff's office, because I guarantee you, if we were going to implement something like this, it would be a big roundtable discussion. With the higher ups, I would be in there, okay, to discuss if this is the best thing to do for our schools. Right.
Well, and like,
And I'm sure the police department had something similar.
Right.
I just don't know if I think they're doing the best they can.
all right, I'm gonna help you out.
I'll leave it at that.
All right. So we understand where you're trying to come from with it, and try to stay within the guidelines or whatever you have to stay in with, And like Jared was saying, and maybe you, without saying it the wrong way, just mindset versus, and I ain't never been a cop, I just only intervene with a few. I think their mindsets are totally different than a regular just police officer.
Right, but it's not. It's just for the record. It wouldn't just it's not a grant that would just put narcotic agents in a school. It's any cop that works for the police department that wanted to come in there.
It's just
understand.
detail,
Right.
Just like working the bingo.
Just the overtime detail. Right.
I understand.
Right.
So once again,
scary.
we just speaking on just the situations, and we gotta knock a lot of things in the butt before they even start if we can.
Right.
So just being a normal person and walking to school, and like I told you, had a regular HPD officer, and he's still with the force. Like, I mean, man, I probably ain't even know what a drug was. My shirt was probably cut off sleeve, had a turbo football on it, and I was walking to school to go lift weights. And he passed by me and he said, bad boys, what you gonna do? And he rolled his window down, And me, I'm not criminal, so I just thought he liked the show. So I started laughing and kept on walking. But as I got older, I realized he was really just antagonizing me to see if I would either take off running or if I would disrespect him or anything like that. So if that guy was to happen to get off into this school system with that detail, and we already know it got a lot of disrespectful kids these days, no matter what culture, color, whatever, kids are very disrespectful. He is a guy I see doing the wrong thing, maybe by just a little harassment, and the kid saying, I don't have it, and may spit out an expletive. But he's going to feel so disrespected that kid cursed him out and not find nothing wrong with his actions to be a learning lesson and say, well, you know what? I was wrong for assuming you did this, and you was wrong for cursing me out, and we should go out both ways, to the point where he may not have no leeway to do that kid anything. And then the moment he see that kid on the street, it's a situation. So how would that implement if I get into it with this officer at school, and then randomly outside of school this officer picks me up or whatever just on something that he said he saw, not even with a partner? Would that be a conflict of interest?
It depends, man. you'd have to really show a history of it.
Couldn't even
like-
show
like a-
history with George Floyd. I mean,
that's no, they did.
yeah, but I'm saying, but it took I mean, it was.
What I'm getting
deep.
at is you would have to show a
Well,
history of this
intent.
officer harassing a specific person,
Right.
over and over again.
But see, so with that call too, and I know it's hard to prove that it's harassment. I know it's a lot of in and outs to it as far as with being able to prove those things. But that's almost like if a female is getting harassed by her ex or her boyfriend, right? And we tell them, well, he really ain't do you anything but make this call. And even though you could tell that call might be something serious that you might not make it, why in situations like that we have to give so many chances? Or like you say, have to prove intent. Like I would have literally have to go find 5, 6 different situations to prove that he.
I'll and because everybody's innocent until proven guilty,
Right.
and that's a whole nother topic. But in the situation that you're describing, right? Any person, take the cop side out of it. Any person, after you have that first impression of somebody, is going to have a predetermined opinion about that person. So absolutely,
On both sides.
on both sides, absolutely. If you feel I'm harassing you and you're a student, that not only are you going to negatively look
Right.
at me, but everybody else that wears a uniform, you're going to have that negative view of them, right? And for the most part, you're going to have your defensive barrier up every time you deal with somebody in law enforcement. You will, until you deal with a good one. It's human nature. I'm not
Right.
blaming anybody.
Right.
That's just the
Right.
way. That's just
I
the way
agree
humans
with you.
interact with people. And on the flip side, as an officer, you dealt with this kid 2 or 3 times because you're doing the vape thing at school, and this kid's rude, disrespectful, cursing. You found vapes on him before in the past, whatever the case may be. You're going to have a predetermined opinion about that kid when you deal with him on the street. Now, when you start talking about individual targeting, that's a whole another
I mean, it's
facet of it.
illegal, right, for this kid to have a vape if he's under 18, correct?
Correct.
So if I stop him in school multiple times for the suspicion of vaping,
It's the problem. We don't operate under reasonable
That's
suspicion.
where we were going with it. Like
we
that's
operate,
what I
we
want
operate
to.
under probable
but that's
cause.
my whole.
That's what he's saying.
That's
If
what
you take somebody off the
because
street
I
that has
know
been
so
doing
many
that.
times that you done this. Now I'm riding down the street and I may see a puff cloud.
It increase. Well, if you're under 18, a puff cloud is probable cause. But
Right.
The-
But then, let's say you get to him and he has no vape on him. I'm not trying to actually get into an argument. I'm just
Right.
pointing a picture of a situation that may happen. Not saying it could.
Right.
Like how would, and I know you don't know because you don't know the actual overall scheme of the grant and the situation if it was to happen, but what picture would that also paint? That's my whole thing, not the actual.
So what's your
injustice
idea of
to
how
it.
this is going to be implemented? I guess is what you're saying. Like
my-
if you're not going to be targeting, you know, you know what I'm saying? Like Tori's saying if you're not going to be directly policing, how you just said it, how you said it when he was
What's
saying
that?
you're not going to objectively or you said we're not going to do something target the. And if you know a kid's doing it on the street, you're not going to target that kid in the.
If you know he's
School.
good targeting in school,
You know what I'm saying?
And once you see him outside, away
right,
from
right.
school,
You would have some predetermined opinions made of that person, absolutely. But those are all things that increase your reasonable suspicion.
But you're not going out trying to arrest or charge kids on the street
No,
for vaping.
No.
So
not,
if you
well,
see a kid. But wait,
I don't understand what y'all asking.
But I'm actually
Because
specific.
yes, on the street it's still illegal.
No, I
like it
get
is in
that.
school,
But I'm
yes.
saying you're not. It's not like if you just see a kid that was busted in school, right, walking on the street.
That's
no
not enough probable cause to stop them.
But what I'm saying is that what Tori's saying is that it happens regardless of probable cause because police can make up their probable cause for
anything.
you know that. And I'm not saying I'm not
Right.
not pointing fingers, but it's the same thing. Oh, I smell weed, so I can search your vehicle, or I can do what that happens all the time.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't.
Correct. Okay,
Right.
so that's what I'm saying. What he's saying is to have these additional police officers that aren't screened and trained properly to be in the school.
There's a reason why there's a state law that you have to be an SRO certified to be an SRO at a school.
But not just, just grant related. That's where we're going to circle back and to say that if this is a detail, right? So anybody.
But that's what I'm getting at. There's a state law that says to be an SRO, you have to be a certified SRO.
So even in this grant,
this is not really being an SRO.
But this is not being an SRO.
That's my point. That's what we're going at.
But I'm saying there's a reason the state put that
law
in. That's what I'm getting at.
I get that.
Because I think we're on the same page.
We are.
That's what I'm getting at.
So what do you think they're going to do or can do if you can write the policy now, right? What is the best way of implementing this to have these additional?
Or what I think they're going to do.
What you think they're going to do, and both sides. What do you think they're going to do, and what would you do differently?
What I think they're going to do is it's going to be a two-faceted thing. I think that the SRO, when he has a Jude officer at school working that grant, any vape that comes across, whether it's a teacher, a principal, whoever, that comes across finding those vapes, those cases are going to go to that officer, right? The SRO is not going to have to deal with the vaping stuff on those days. Secondly, I think the intel of where the kids are vaping and the most prevalent times that they're vaping, that Jude officer will patrol those areas of the school. Whether it be around the restrooms, in Terrebonne's case, under the stadium, in between class changes, the tennis court areas, all those areas that are not properly monitored, which is the biggest problem, by the way, of any problem at school. It's supervision. It's not policing.
And that, again, blows my mind.
But those areas, that officer will patrol. The way I'm understanding, will patrol those, and if he sees a kid vaping, sees a group of kids all circling around in a circle, and they all look like they might be vaping, making contact with those kids and going through the procedures of locating the vapes, and if they located and taking criminal action against them. That's how I see it happening, from the way it was explained to me.
Right.
Understand this, as I want to, before we go off on another tangent, give you a little history of how this all even started with having an additional officer at Terrebonne. And I've heard it not just from you guys, I've heard it from why they got all these cops at Terrebonne, why they got an extra cop at what's going on at Terrebonne. Terrebonne, just like any other high school, they have factions within the school, student-wise, that don't get along with each other. Right?
It's every high school across the country.
The problem is this year, and in a few years in the past, that a lot of these kids are starting to group fight with each other. So it's not just me and Jared fighting each other, right? It's Jared and Tori come and jump on Cody, and they had a large, I don't want to say large amount. They had an amount of those fights that was above what they would have on average. So they used a different grant to bring an additional officer on there to try to deter the school violence during lunch recess. That's how it started. And I have no problem with that. I think that's a great use of it. I think that if you're going to have an officer in school and use grant money for it, I think that is an excellent use of
the money,
both manpower and money. Right? It's targeted times. It's specific. There's a reason for it, and it's proven that having an additional officer will help curb violent acts on a school campus.
Same reason,
I don't think anybody.
A police officer that walks outside of a ballroom at 2:00.
Right.
It's not to give DWIs.
No,
it's to make sure fights don't break out, and it's just to maintain peace.
So I think that in itself is a great idea, and kudos to them for being able to do that one. That grant was specifically at Terrebonne because that was a District B grant. Okay, and for those who don't know that is a Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government grant. It's specifically for the districts that our councilmen run are all like A, B, C, D.
Sure,
That's how. So District B is just all it is the district that the council person that put that in place. It's their district, so it's called the District B grant, and it's split up. The sheriff's office has some of it, and the police department has some of it, and it's specifically meant to try to deter criminal activity within that council person's district. So they took some of that money and they put it towards this to try to deter some of the violence in the schools that falls within that district. So that's where that came from. That evolved into when having that additional officer there, people's eyes started opening up to the amount of vaping problems that they had. When the money ran out for the District B funds, they were kind of looking, because having an additional officer, lo and behold, actually helps reduce the amount of violent acts on the campus. So what they did was they said, okay, well, we can have kind of a double-edged sword. We'll put an officer in the school under the Jude grant for underage vaping, and he's there at lunch recess to help curb the violence. So they try to get creative and kind of knock out two birds with one stone. That's the whole reason that additional officers there. That's the whole reason why it's been done the way that it's been done. Is because of that. That they're trying because the school violence is a problem, and so is the vaping. So that was the idea and the structure behind it. I hate that I'm doing all the talking.
No, it's look,
So if you back up further than that, I've been dealing with underage vaping for probably about 4 to 5 years now, and kind of going at it from the best way that I can when I was the SRO at Terrebonne. And I know a lot of people have an issue with, well, it's a kid, and we're giving him a criminal charge just because he has some nicotine, right? And I understand. I do. I wholeheartedly understand that concept.
It goes back to one of our previous podcasts when we talked about the whole zero tolerance policy.
Right.
So zero tolerance, and you and I were talking about this, still is in place with this specific category, right? So tobacco and or vaping, right?
Yeah, well, it's all under the same law.
Okay.
So vaping is listed with Louisiana, the LRS, Louisiana Revised Statutes. For criminal activity, it's all grouped underneath tobacco usage. And it's the underage tobacco law is what it is. So a vape is categorized as a tobacco product. It's not a cigarette. And look, it used to be worded that way, but they said, this is stupid. Let's just bundle it all together. It's all nicotine is what it is. So they categorize that as a tobacco product. Whether it has nicotine in it or not, it's a tobacco product.
What if it has CBD or THC?
If it has CBD in it, depending on the levels of THC, it's still a tobacco product.
Okay.
If it crosses that threshold, it becomes illegal because of the amount of THC. It's possession of a Schedule I narcotic.
Okay.
Right. So that it's handled like that across the board. The problem is this, and I don't know whether it's right, wrong, indifferent. You guys can maybe give me some feedback so that we can hopefully make it better. But this is the evolution that I've seen in the schools, being on the front line of this, like I said, for about 5 years now. The first year that vaping really started becoming a prevalent problem in schools, the way we handled it was the old-fashioned way, right? Call your parents, have your parents come to school. You get like a little small school, like maybe get detention first, then a suspension.
Saturday school.
They don't have Saturday school anymore, but they have in-school suspension, that kind of stuff. They got to pay a teacher to be at Saturday school. Yeah. It's a whole other thing. So that's what we did. Look, hey, little Johnny got caught vaping. Come pick your kid up, have a little conversation with them, do a little counseling, send them all on their way. The problem is our vape usage in the school skyrocketed, right? Because there's no consequences, right? There's no penalty other than I get to go home and vape more. I may get in a little bit of trouble with my parents for getting suspended, but even with the parents, the cop ain't charging them. It's how big of a deal can it be?
Yeah.
So we fought that and fought it. So the following year, I came to orientation with the ninth graders, and I specifically spelled it out for everybody, the things that you're going to get charged with. For me personally, if you curse a teacher out, you're going to see a judge, right? Like direct profanity towards a teacher or any staff member at a school. If you're fighting and it's a big disturbance, type fight, and I'm not talking about like a pushing match in PE, but if you get into a large fight disturbance, you go and see a judge. Any kind of weapons, narcotics.
When you say go and see a judge, it's going to go back to how you broke it down earlier. It's an arrest, but
right.
Not an incarceration.
Not an incarceration, right. You bring weapons or drugs to school, it's an incarceration, right? Vaping, you go and see a judge. That's really, that's the most things you see on a campus is those 5 things. It's not every now and then you'll get some more serious crimes. Of course it happens, and you handle those accordingly. But those are the 5 things that we enforce regularly. I don't want to say zero tolerance, but we have a little bit stiffer of I guess an opinion on those, right? Because those are just basic fundamental things that you should be doing on the workforce. You don't want to curse your employer out. It's a step process. But so the next year, I went. I explained to the parents, explained to the 9th graders. I went to the school assembly, explained to the kids during the school assembly that look, and they already knew the other things, but I added the vape to it. That if you get caught with a vape this year, you're going to see a judge. There's a fine involved in it. There may be some community service involved in it, but if you get caught at school on campus with a vape, you are being charged and you're going to see a judge. And like I explained to you, a few days ago, whenever we were discussing this topic, that didn't stop it, but it stopped that shooting, elevation of it. I think the terminology I used with you yesterday was, it plugged up the holes in the boat, right? But it didn't take the water out.
Yeah.
So it did have an effect, and a positive one. And it also gave any kids that may have been on the fence, it gave them an excuse. Like, look, I can't get in trouble with the police officer. If I got to go to court, my mom's going to kill me. I can't vape this. So that there's a compounding effect that has on the overall campus.
So what's the outcome? So they get charged. They go see the judge.
Mm-hmm.
They have to pay a fine. Is there any substance abuse classes? Is there any fundamental education? Is there anything in place now that once you do that? Because if I get that it's a charge, but if all I got to do is go in front of a judge, pay the fine,
right,
and no additional
right
education or anything, is there anything like that in place?
Yes and no. It kind of depends on how they look at it, right? Generally speaking, no. Generally speaking, it's maybe like some community service. I think it's like 16 hours community service at most, depending on how many times you've been charged with it. It's a small fine. I think it's like $50, and then some court costs, and that's pretty much it. But the whole reason of me wanting to start charging these kids, because I'm thinking along the same lines as you, knowing that this is a substance abuse problem, that they can get into the Spark program or whatever and start getting some education towards the vaping, or getting some type of substance abuse protocol is put into place for them. But from what I've seen, that doesn't happen, right? I think that people's eyes are starting to open up.
Well, if you are really dead, and I believe you, that this is a substance abuse issue in teens, right? That this is a new trend of substance abuse, if you will. Then again, get ahead of this, and because again, finding somebody $50, $80, and having them a day in court, when it's the same thing that when you do with, like you said, we've been fighting the war on drugs, and it's kind of that whole definition of insanity.
Do the same thing over and expect different results.
Exactly.
So,
and that's what we're doing. If this is substance abuse, and you're classifying it, and you believe that it is, and I agree with you that it is, why are we doing the same thing we've been doing for 30 years, finding these people? Get these youth involved in an education platform.
Well, and I'm glad you brought, because I'll go in. I'm trying to go through the evolution of how I handle things and seeing the things that make a difference. So I go a whole year. I charge these kids, sit them in court, and like I said, the rise of the problem starts kind of stemming down, but it's not fixing the problem. I'm still getting repeat offenders. I'm still getting those type of things. So that summer, I'm involved with Team Spirit. It's a Christian camp that they have here locally. The Team Spirit people, they bring in speakers and teachers throughout their camp that do educate the kids on underage drinking and the whole plethora of different things. And one of it is that it was these 2 nurses, and I'm ashamed of myself for not remembering their names because they're excellent. They brought these 2 nurses in to talk to the kids about specifically underage vaping. So I would sit in the class like I always do, and I told you this on the phone. I'm very, very skeptical when it comes to the drinking classes, when it comes to the smoking classes, because being a former smoker, I've been forced to sit in these classes, and I'm like, this is a waste of time. This is stupid. It's just a bunch of that. Smoking is bad. Okay, that kind of crap.
Smoking causes cancer.
Right. So I said, you know what? But I like to sit in the classes so I can see what the kids are learning, the information that's being put out to them, so that hopefully, I may learn something from the class, or it may be a great class, and I'm able to piggyback off that when I'm talking to kids at school. This was hands down the best underage vaping presentation I'd ever seen. These two ladies did a phenomenal job of not talking at the kids, but talking to them. They did a great job of just explaining the information. I'm not telling you not to vape. I'm not telling you to vape. I'm telling you that this is vaping. This is what it scientifically is doing to your body. All of you are young adults and are capable of making a good, educated decision. Right.
You know?
And that's the stance they took.
So you don't know anything about where their program, if it was their program, or this is a program that's out there that
I think it was their program that they put together through, I believe, maybe Terrebonne General. Don't quote me, I'm not 100% on that one. When I sat through their class, I said, this needs to be, we got to get this at Terrebonne. This is that missing piece of the puzzle, that next step of putting that whole puzzle together to try to stem this damn vaping problem that we have. So I called Troy Wininger up, he's assistant principal at Terrebonne. I said, dude, just sat through this class. It's phenomenal. We really need to look at getting into it. I had the woman's name at the time, so I told him. He said, I know one of those ladies, friends of his wife or something like that. He said, if you tell me it's a good class, I know you're passionate about trying to stop this stuff, we'll see what we can do. So he talked to Mr. Dryden. We all, at the beginning of the school year, put our heads together. We had a little conversation, and what we decided to do was bring them into the school. And so any kid that was caught with vaping, or any kid that they might suspect, like sometimes you might go and it'd be a group of kids, Johnny's the one that's called with the vape, but they're all vaping. All of those kids have to go through the class. They might not get a charge, but they at least have to go through the class. So we started doing that, taking away their recess or their PE time, and the ladies would come. I think we started with like once a week or something, but after a few weeks it started working. So we had to actually go to every 2 weeks. Then we had to go to once a month to fill the class up, right? Because like you said, I wholeheartedly believe that getting a school consequence, getting a law enforcement consequence, losing their PE time, and then getting empowered by actually having the information that they need to make a good decision, started putting a stem in it. The water in that boat started getting shoveled out of it, and then COVID hit. Right, so we were actually making a huge dent. Like our vaping numbers, especially repeat offenders.
See, that's something else that blows my mind is like how in especially 2020. How you vaping whenever there's no together, you got mask on, you got
They don't care. These kids, COVID is something you and I worry about, or adults worry about. These kids do not care about COVID.
Oh, I know. I get that, but I'm saying, how is it? How did that still?
Well, it actually. Well, be honest with you, if you think about what you're saying, think about it. Prior to vaping, it was the hookah pipes, the bongs, marijuana blunts. So the coronavirus actually made everybody go solo. Like, I don't want to hit what you're hitting. I don't want to smoke that bong behind you. I don't want to hit that pipe behind you.
Right.
I don't want to smoke that blunt behind you. So now, hey, look here. You take your vape, and we can vape all day together.
But these and you do get a lot of that of I guess more people have an individual base, but you still have the ones that are in a circle and they pass it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody doesn't have the finances to actually do it and don't have the places to hide it.
Let me tell you how addicting vaping is. These kids, a lot of them, because they know that we search, and when I say search, I'm not talking about putting hands on kids, empty their pockets out, kind of shake your pants, pull your pants legs up above your sock line, that the principal searches through their school bag. There's no kind of hands-on type things. Maybe a metal detector if you really want to get into it. So these kids are not dumb, right? They start hiding it. And one of the places they like to hide it because they know we ain't going there is their crotch. So imagine how addicted you have to be if all three of us meet up in the bathroom and I pull a vape out of my crotch and I hit it and go, here you go, Jared. You're like, oh, thanks, bro. And you pass it to Tori, and then I hit it again and put it back in my crotch. That stuff's going on.
Ooh,
That's how addictive.
that's crackhead kind of stuff.
That's how addictive this nicotine is. Man.
But and then it's in young adolescents, you know, so they're not maturely thinking.
Right.
They're like, man, you took a bath last night? All right, well, let me get
I don't
that.
think they asked that. But that's
No
that's
freaking way.
that's the level of addiction we're dealing
That's
with.
insane, man.
And especially in young men, you know, they're like, man, I'm not messing with that. Like, you know, thanks. Yeah, bro. And nobody thinks twice about it because they want that nicotine so
Yeah.
much.
And I mean, even today, because I mean, I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty confident that I can say this, that every school has a security camera system.
Yes, yes. Now some are better than others, but yes,
So-
they all have cameras.
But I mean, so you're talking about like the if there's problem areas, you know, are those under surveillance? Are those under?
This is a whole another issue. The security camera systems. Each school has to take out their own
money,
annual
yeah.
budget to do cameras. So you have some schools that put a lot of weight in the cameras. They put a lot of effort into keeping their camera system up because that's what they deem as important.
I'm gonna come get their contracts.
So those cameras go up. I wish they had a bidding process for
They
the
do.
for the whole parish.
Oh, they
not
don't
just
for the
schools.
whole parish.
But because I think the school board should be paying for cameras in the schools. I don't think
Right.
the school should have to. But that's way above my
Yeah.
influence. But
It's not.
well.
That school board member.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get it.
So you have some schools that say if it comes between a camera or a Promethean board for my classroom, I'm getting a Promethean board. I'm not getting a camera. I got teachers to go look for that kind of stuff. And then they saw that old school mentality. And look, cameras don't prevent, right? Cameras, for the most part, cameras are just really good witnesses.
Yep.
You know, now some kids may be like, okay, they're putting the camera up there. I'm not going to vape there. But most of them, they even forget the cameras are there.
Absolutely.
You know,
They may do that when they see the person
right,
installing them
right,
or at the beginning
right.
of school, but eventually they forget they're there. It's a whole Big Brother philosophy,
right?
you know.
Yep. So you know, there's pros and cons to having those. But to answer your question, it depends on the school.
Yeah.
You know, it really does.
I kind of assumed that. I kind of thought that that's how it's moving.
I'm telling you, the number one deterrent / fix / whatever that you want to call it to preventing violence, vaping, run the plethora of different kind of charges is supervision.
Yeah.
It really is. It's properly supervising the kids in the classroom, in the hallway, at lunch recess. From the time they come on campus to the time they leave, these kids need to be properly supervised.
I used to have that conversation with my mom all the time. You know, she was a teacher for a long time, and she used to always get, I don't say mad, but she'd always get a little frustrated.
They
She
get
had
defensive,
duty,
right? Oh well, yeah, right.
and it's like, and I get it. And I have friends that are teachers, and we have these same conversations. Is that, you know, I went to school to teach. My job is to teach, and I'm going. It is, but it doesn't just mean in the classroom.
Right.
You know, like you still have to, you know, duty is part of teaching.
I tell them
You
all
know,
the time.
like you're
'cause-
teaching them about supervision, you're teaching them about authority, you're teaching them about, and I know it's a stretch, I get it, but man, with 80 plus teachers at some of these schools, you can't tell me that 40 of them can't be on duty every day instead of 4.
I agree with you. I can't tell you the amount of teachers that come complain to me at lunchtime, at duty, that they have duty. and that they're teachers. And I'm like, I'm out here too, wearing a ballistic vest,
Yeah.
a black uniform at the time, you know, when I was at the police department, a belt. I'm wearing 30 pound, 30 pound, 40 pounds of extra equipment,
Yeah,
right? Standing out here too, and I'm walking around,
yeah, and boots and
sweating my tail off
and
out
tennis
here
shoes
every day, you know. And you complaining to me about
Yeah.
being out here on duty. Well, I signed up to be a teacher. I'm a cop. Like I can say the same argument.
Yeah.
But my job extends past that. It's
Right.
a counselor.
Everybody's
it's
job
leading by
extends-
example. It's
it drives
being a
me
liaison.
too long.
You know, it's not just I'm a teacher or I'm a cop or we're all here for the same goal. It's
No
it's
job.
to educate, empower,
Yes.
and keep these
Yes.
kids safe. You know,
Yes.
but
But I think we touched on everything we wanted to touch about. I don't know if Tori, you have any other topics that or bullet points that, you know, when it comes to this vaping.
I mean, if we gonna bring extra officers into the schools, like let's make it an educational thing. You know, I mean, we gonna be reprimanding kids for doing kid shit. Sorry, you know, because like you say, we had people go in the same spot, smoke 1-2 cigarettes, you know, and you would get that taken from you, thrown away, you know, and no real consequences behind it. I mean, I think I seen a person get in trouble once for cigarettes, and that was probably at Humble Junior High.
Right.
You know?
Different
So,
beast, though. It really
Oh,
is a
yeah,
different
we
beast.
I mean, I definitely believe it's a different piece, but if we go in there making them criminals, you know what I'm saying?
Right. I don't disagree with you at all on that aspect.
Like your first criminal record, oh man, I was vaping at school.
Put that on your resume.
Put that on your resume.
Like I hate even using the word criminal when we're talking about juveniles. For some offenses, yes,
Right.
you know,
Of course.
but for those status offenses, you know, those juvenile offenses, the things that are just not status, delinquent offenses is what they're called. The laws that are against the law when you're a juvenile, but not when you're an adult, like listening to your parents or going
Right.
to
Yeah, yeah.
school, curfew, smoking, those type of things. And again, this is just thoughts in the mind of Cody, but those type of offenses shouldn't even be on a kid's
Adult.
criminal type.
But they don't, right?
No,
Like,
they're not.
yeah,
They're
okay.
not. But and those records are sealed. But you can still see sometimes, not as an employer, but like if I go look at it because of my profession, I have access to
Right,
juvenile
and
records.
it's his, it's not mine.
Yeah, it's not mine.
That's yours.
So I have access to some of those juvenile records, right? But I don't even know. You got to keep track of it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree,
get
especially
that,
until a
but-
certain point. You know, I think your juvenile record, once you become an adult, should only continue. I know we're getting off that, but should only continue if you continue making mistakes, right? To set a precedence when you go to court and saying, hey, look, you've been making these bad decisions since you were 15. Now you're 19. It's a problem.
Right.
But at some point, you hit 18, and there's no more mistakes, or you know that needs to go. Like
Right,
you said,
and
maybe not disappear, but seal to where
Right,
when
and-
you make a
and it
mistake at
is.
25. What you did at 16 is not
Right.
even viewable.
And
you
it
know?
is, especially for the delinquent offenses, it is. But those are still considered criminal,
Yeah.
you know. And I don't know. It just doesn't sit on the palate well.
It doesn't. It
You know,
doesn't.
you're
That's
talking
like
about
when you
criminals
say
and
that,
juveniles,
you know, the zero tolerance. I think there has to be zero tolerance for certain things.
Yeah.
You know, but when you talk about tobacco-related things, and even though I think there still needs some kind of step program. You get caught with it the first time, like you said. You know, you come in, you have a talk. No charge, no arrest, no judge. You come in and maybe you talk with these ladies, and you actually get a feeling. Second, you want to see the judge. You know, there needs to be third suspension, more judge, more fine. You know, there has to be some kind of step program because as a 16-year-old that does not understand the depth of this problem and the depths of the potential nicotine,
Right.
like get them in that substance abuse right away, or you know that
But
education.
we can start, like, just because I charge a kid, right? Everything that you're asking for can still happen at the next level, right? Like
I get that.
I can still charge.
But it sets a stigma in that kid's brain that, God dang, all that, like Tori was something with the cop thing, like they get a feeling that I don't think a kid should have a complex when it comes to law enforcement and the judicial system because of a tobacco product, and that could do that. Kids these days are so damn fragile. You know, it's like something,
But
it's just crazy. I don't know why.
Part of the problem with that too, Jared. Not all parents are created equally.
No
right?
doubt.
And in a perfect world, yes, you know, give them a verbal warning, get with their parents.
Oh no, I'm not saying.
Parents
No,
take them.
that's what. Let me get back. That first offense, right? I'm not saying a verbal warning. I'm saying they need to come into the principal's office. It needs to be a situation. They have to go through that substance abuse
Right.
program, like immediately.
And look,
you know?
I have, and I wouldn't have any problem with that if the school system's set up, and we can get that program back in place. I have no problem with the first time that they're caught with a tobacco product, the school takes action. It doesn't go to the SRO. They go to class on the school campus.
Yeah.
You know, it's handled in house.
Take away a lunch,
You know,
recess,
take away
whatever they
lunch,
got to,
right,
you know.
right. I have no problem with that. And they catch them again, as long as the school documents that.
Right.
Yes.
Because when you get that parent that this is my child's,
First time.
My kid doesn't do this.
Times.
Right. Well, no, ma'am. This is actually your kid's second time, and it says on here what's going to happen to your kid on the second time. We're referring this to the SRO now.
Yeah.
I have no issue with that at all, and I think that's a great idea.
It should be in the school paperwork in the beginning of the year.
Ain't nobody reads that shit.
It doesn't matter if you read it or not. If you sign it,
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
But they can also during school assembly they can actually break that down to the
Right.
kids. So at least
Yeah.
the kids know what
Exactly.
their consequences is, and they do know that if they get caught vaping that they're going to be charged. But I like I said, I have no problem with if it's documented properly. That way everybody's treated the same. Because I'm a firm believer in you have to treat everybody's child the same way, consequence-wise. Because if you start picking and choosing, then none of
the
it.
whole system
Right,
Don't
the
matter.
whole system crumbles.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as it's so if I catch y'all two vaping and you get charged and you don't,
That's a
I
problem.
can explain to the parents that this was Jared's first time.
Yep.
This is Tori's second time. Right.
That's the policy.
Right, that's the policy. As long as it's
You
documented
stand on the
properly,
guidelines.
and I can go to, and I can show an angry parent that because if y'all two are friends or us two are friends,
We're
or
gonna
all three are
talk, right.
We're gonna talk. Our parents are gonna talk. Why Cody didn't get charged? We got charged. It was my first time getting caught.
Right.
That kind of thing.
And with the zero tolerance thing, that doesn't happen. It's just kind of everybody's treated equally, but everybody goes
Right.
and if somebody,
but the
like Tori
problem
says,
is-
that if he already has that stigma in his brain about police officers in the judicial system, it pushes him further and further and further away from ever coming back and having that safety feeling that a police officer in our judicial system should provide to people.
So
that's
just to elaborate on it, and I understand it. I'm a little bit more visual with it. I do know that it happens, but within this situation, my whole struggle with it is the immaturity of the kids
Right.
and the addiction. With those two compounding each other, the conviction or the juvenile charge is a little bit not over because it's the rules, but you see where it carries the kids. You know what I'm saying?
That's my whole position on it. Is that I think especially the first offense. First offense, go to a substance abuse. You have to be forced to take that substance abuse class, but you're not criminally charged. You're not going in front of a judge.
Right.
Everything stays in school. And then kind of.
And I'm 100% okay with that. But that's something that the school, the SRO supervised, like all the DA's office, all those people have to be
on that same page.
on the same page. That way, when it does go to court, the court system knows that the school tried these steps.
Yep.
The school tried. So let's do the next
Next
step.
step.
Now we may have to have some court mandated substance abuse issues. We may have, so it's a process. To get to that point, but it's not impossible.
We
And
need to
that's a
implement
very
something to
feasible-
that grant then.
Well,
What's
the
that?
grant again, it needs a whole nother grant needs to be written.
Right.
If this
Only-
is as bad as it is, because the grant that's in place, they're not going to add anything to that grant because it's tailored and written specifically for
something else.
underage drinking.
Right.
If vaping is this big of an issue, if it's this big of an issue locally, it's the same.
It's
It's
gotta
just
be.
magnitude.
Right.
Yeah.
Magnified. So there needs to be additional grants, even if it's like the grant. The local grants, right?
Right,
Like District
right.
B, District.
Well, I don't know if these two ladies even still do because I haven't talked to them since
The
pre-COVID.
We need
right?
to find if you
But-
can even get with the vice principal and find out, because even if it's their
They had to
program, then
sign
great.
in the sheet.
Get that program. But if it's not their program and it's something that they went and they got educated on
Right,
and they
right.
took this class and they're just continue to implement it, is maybe we can start something even locally.
Right.
Of
Well, that's what I was
creating
getting at.
these own-
If it's through Terrebonne General, Terrebonne General does a phenomenal job of working with schools.
Yeah.
They do it through their athletic trainer program. They're pretty open to helping the school and the parish, with whatever they need. So if it is run through that, I don't see Terrebonne General having any problem with if it becomes that big of a problem and we have some additional funding, to be able to let these nurses go teach at these schools, and they can hit a different school every week or
Like part of a DARE
whatever.
program.
That was my next suggestion, or having the DARE people do it. But
or
I
just
really-
partner them, right? Because it's
Right.
a whole lot easier when it comes from a medical professional
that you took the words out of my
than
mouth.
it does from a
Yes,
police officer.
Yes. I really do think that information comes better from, like, I'm a nurse,
Yeah.
you know, or I'm a doctor, that carries a lot more weight when it comes to talking about your health than Joe Bo.
I'm going to go to jail,
Right.
you know?
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if and look, sometimes it takes a local school district.
It's got to be piloted somewhere.
Right. Law enforcement, DA's office, medical field. Sometimes it takes a local community to start something like that and show that, look, we don't have a vaping problem anymore because this is what we did. We address it as a substance
Well,
abuse issue.
we have an issue,
but we went from this to this.
The
Right.
curve is flattened. It's
Right.
on the downslide,
Right.
or it's not, and it's just But it's not, like you said, it's not peaking anymore.
Right.
It's not something that's going to blow up and really create some serious problems long term. Because that's what happens, especially in the substance abuse issue. Everything has that trickle down, and But this, when you're creating substance abuse to the numbers that you're saying, that's a long term problem for our community.
Right. Well, you figure, and I'll just to give you an idea of how the numbers sit. On average, and again, arrest is not equal incarceration, and it's from a plethora of different, from uncontrollable all the way to weapons at school, right, and everything in between. Your average junior high and high school in this parish has roughly about 100 offenses that happen on the school campus. Some have a little more, some have a little
A year?
less. Yes. I would probably say about 40 of those incidences are vaping. Sometimes more. It just depends on the school and the kids that you have there. You tend to have a little more vaping issues at a high school level than you do at junior high because they have better access to older friends. So all those things come into play. But it as far as getting ahead of it, we're already past the point of getting ahead of it.
We got to
Right.
jump 10 steps forward.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. This needs to be a big program that needs to be put in place. So we've been a little long with it. I didn't want to go this long on this one, but so we're gonna wrap this up, and I mean we'll tackle it again another time if we can get something in place and get some people and maybe get a nurse on and talk about that if we can find out who these are. But Cody, I'll leave you with give you some departing words, and I don't want to thank you because I mean I really didn't know that this was as bad as it was, and Cody talked about wanting to talk about this, and I was like, hey, let's do it. So very insightful. I hope everybody that listens to this pay attention to your kids. Watch what they're doing because I don't think that I didn't think it was this big of an issue. So obviously it is.
And if you catch your kids with it, understand what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
That's
Educate yourself on it beforehand.
Right.
And pretty much anything, like what this conversation really brought up is more of an addiction and a maturity level.
Well, that's
so,
what the
like
problem
even
is,
with your kids acting out, that might be something dealing with an addiction. That's something that they're missing. Even with food, a lot of us are seeing our kids double the size we were when we were their ages. You got to think about the addiction to food, the addiction to just eating because they're bored. Video games not keeping them entertained. So a lot of the things that we actually do and run into problems are 90% addictions. So don't be too quick to just jump on your kids, man. Really sit down and try to figure out the basis and the root cause of what's actually having them go that route.
Right. So just need to reach out.
Look them up, educate yourself. And again, we're going to leave it like we always do. Remember,
Well,
divide. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't get my.
I thought you were
sorry.
through. I'm sorry.
I just thank both of y'all for coming down this rabbit hole with me.
It's no problem.
It's something that I am passionate about because I've dealt with it. I know I'm long-winded on this one.
2 hours.
But it's
It's
been,
definitely worth it. Again, I didn't think it was this big of an issue. Didn't.
But it's been something that I've been fighting on my own.
And it's just
for
going
5
to get
years,
worse if nobody stops it. Think about it, because right now we're fighting this problem in junior high and high school.
Right.
How long
It's only
before it
gonna get
takes
worse.
to get to elementary?
Right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And we can get ahead of that one.
Right.
So that's a great point. It really is. So I want to say sorry for being long-winded, but thank you guys for putting up with it.
No problem.
And
pleasure,
listeners, thank y'all for coming down this rabbit hole with me
Too
too.
easy.
The divide is not so wide.
Peace.